Hey there, I hope you're well today. In this video, we're going to be discussing Genesis chapter 18. Some of the things we're going to be talking about are the three visitors that come to see Abraham. We're going to also talk about Sarah's reaction to finding out that she's going to have a child. And then we're also going to look at the conversation between Abraham and God in regards to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, I'm not going to read Genesis chapter 18 to you in its entirety, and I am going to be picking out certain verses that I want to talk about, so please do your due diligence. Read the entire chapter, whether before you watch the rest of this video or after, to make sure that you understand the full context and get as much out of this video as possible. The first thing we see in Genesis chapter 18 are three visitors are passing through, and Abraham wants to be hospitable to them. We later find out that these three visitors are two angels and the Lord himself, most likely in the form of the Trinity of Jesus Christ. So for those of you who don't think that Jesus is in the Old Testament, this is a great example. Why I can say that is because we know that in our human flesh, we cannot see the face of God. His holiness would destroy us. So therefore, if Abraham is actually physically able to see the Lord and talk with the Lord, it must be the portion of the Trinity, which is God in human form, which is Jesus Christ. So I think that's really cool because we can see right in Genesis chapter 18, Jesus Christ appearing before Abraham. Now, because they're passing through, as typical Middle Eastern culture would dictate, Abraham wants to take care of these visitors. He wants to be very hospitable to them. And we can learn a lot from this. This is not something that's typical in Western culture. This is not something that's typical in America, to be this hospitable to strangers. But Abraham treats these people as honored guests, and he makes sure they are well fed and well rested. But in addition, we actually see Abraham, although he has servants, he chooses to serve these individuals himself. In verse 8, end of verse 8, we read these words, "While they ate, he," meaning Abraham, "stood near them under a tree." So Abraham is standing there waiting to serve them, even though he has servants. He wants to make sure that they are taken care of to the best of his ability. And I think there's a lot that we can learn here. As Christians, people will be more inclined to listen to what we have to say if they like the way we act, or if we live the way we actually say we should. So your words are only as good as your actions. And Abraham is living those words that we read in Philippians about do nothing out of vain conceit, but in everything put others above yourself. Abraham is an example of that for us. And so we must serve those around us, and through our service that may lead those people to Christ, whether through just our actions alone or through being willing to hear what we have to say because they know that we live the lifestyle that we say that we do. In addition, I think often we think the mission field is something far away, something overseas. But we should take Abraham's example and realize the mission field is everywhere. It's with everyone we interact with. We should be a servant of God, an ambassador of Jesus Christ in everything we do. So whenever someone comes to our door or is passing through, we should be serving them as we are called to as Christians. So again, I think there's a lot that we can learn there just from that passage. During this interaction, the Lord reaffirms his promise to Abraham, telling him that he will have a son. And Sarah, due to her old age, starts laughing. Now, in the last chapter, we saw Abraham laugh when he was told of the promise, but his was a joyous laugh. This is more of a, I don't believe this is ridiculous kind of laugh that Sarah is doing. And some people have used this passage to question Sarah's faithfulness. And this is why it's so important to put the Bible in its full context and compare the New and the Old Testament and books against other books, because if you listen to somebody who says that, you might agree with them just based off of chapter 18 of Genesis. But we read these words in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 11. They say, "And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she had considered him faithful who had made the promise." So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because you are human, and there are going to be moments in your life when your faith is shaken. Someone gets a terminal illness in your family, maybe even yourself, or something else tragic happens in your life, or something that just doesn't make sense is happening around you. The world itself is going to hell in a handbasket, as they say. And that might shake your faith. You might question God and say, God, aren't you in control? What are you doing here? And that's okay. Don't beat yourself up for those moments. Sarah had that moment in this passage. But we see in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 11, that she was considered in the list of the faithful. And the reason is because she didn't let that moment of shaken faith dictate the rest of her life or her faithfulness to God. She was reminded by the Lord himself in this passage that God is greater than any problem you can face and is able and in control of your life and in control of the events around you. God is sovereign in all things. So therefore, in those moments of shaken faith, don't beat yourself up, but be reminded of the promises of God. Be reminded that he is in control, and be reminded that he is able to do all things and is greater than any problem you face. I pray every day, and I encourage you to do the same. Pray for unshakable faith. But also, please, don't beat yourself up for those moments of lapse in your faith judgment, because your emotions are going to range throughout your life. They're going to go up and down. There's going to be times when it's easy to be faithful and times when it's hard. Do not beat yourself up for those moments. I've had them myself. I stand before you today saying I've had major moments in my life where I was questioning God. I was very upset, I was angry, or there was something that was happening in my life that was outside of my control and I didn't understand. But be reminded and encouraged, friends, that God truly is in control of all things. He might not get you through the situation the way in which you want to have it resolved. He might not do it on your timeline, but God is in control. So put your trust in him and his promises. Now, at this point, the angels start to leave. And there's a short verse, it's one sentence really, that I really don't want you to miss. In the Bible, this happens often. God doesn't fluff words. He doesn't add anything extra that doesn't need to be added. So the Bible is pretty concise. And because of that, it's very easy to miss those nuggets of knowledge that are in there, because you might read through the chapter and it's not really part of the overarching theme, so it's easy to read that sentence and move on. But there's a sentence that's super powerful here that I don't want you to miss. And the sentence comes from verse 19. And this is the Lord speaking. He says, "For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. So the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him." So what I don't want you to miss there is God is talking about the importance of parents and their relationship with their children. Children are a blessing, but they're also a huge responsibility. Parents, do not miss the mark with your children. Raise them up in the ways of the Lord through your life example, but also through talking with them and conversing with them about God. That is our responsibility as parents. And there is blessing in that, because if you lead your children in the ways of the Lord, they will lead their children in the ways of the Lord, and you will have a ripple effect that is positive throughout all of history. So the Lord is talking about Abraham here, saying that he is going to fulfill what he has promised, because Abraham is going to take his responsibility and direct his children and his household following that in the ways of the Lord, to keep those ways. In America, I think we have a serious failing of parents not leading their children in the ways of the Lord, or not living the example. Or one spouse is solely responsible for the religious aspects of the household. And in America, typically, it's the mother that ends up with that responsibility, because fathers just shrug it off their shoulders for some reason in this country. And fathers, please, I'm talking directly to you right now, do not be that way. Do not let your wife take the full responsibility of leading your children in the Lord. The children need both parents dictating to them the ways of the Lord, talking to them about the ways of God, and leading them appropriately. You can't let that responsibility be that of your spouse. It has to be the couple together leading and training their children in the ways of the Lord. So please, fathers, please, mothers, make sure your household is working together to honor God, to glorify Him in all things, and to raise your children up together in the ways of the Lord. Now, after this, we see God and Abraham talking about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And I've heard time and time again people use this passage to show that we can change God's mind. And that's simply not true. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Therefore, He cannot change. And in this passage, we never once read God saying, yeah, Abraham, you're right. I've changed my mind. So now I'm not going to destroy Sodom for a fewer number of people. And I want to show you how this works. We're actually going to work backwards. God already knew that He wouldn't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah if there was at least 10 faithful people, because God will do right. God will do what is right. So if you work backwards and start with the last verse in this section where God's speaking, He says, hey, I'm not going to destroy the world for 10 people. Well, if that's true, then He definitely won't destroy, not the world, Sodom and Gomorrah. He definitely won't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah for 20 people, because there are 10 people that are faithful within that 20 group. And then same with 30. There's 10 people, at least, in a group of 30, right? If there's 30 people faithful, there has to be at least 10 people faithful, and so on and so forth. So start with the premise that God's saying, I'm not going to destroy, God knew, I should say, that He's not going to destroy the city if there are at least 10 faithful people. So when Abraham asks, hey, will you not destroy the city if you find 50 faithful people? Well, at least He's already decided that He's not going to do it for 10. So of course He's not going to do it for 50. Abraham is just throwing his own opinion out there, and God is reaffirming that, yeah, you're right. If I find at least 10, then I'm not going to destroy them. So if I find 50 or 45 or 40 or 30 or 20, I'm not going to destroy the city, because I've already decided as the supreme being that I'm not going to destroy that city if I find 10 faithful people. So God never changes His mind. He's just confirming to Abraham what He has already determined. Now, the saddest part here, and this is the part that I don't want you to miss, God didn't even find 10 faithful people there. And how scary is that? I sometimes look around in America and I think to myself, hopefully there's 10 faithful people in that city. Hopefully there's 10 faithful people in that city. Because God is against wickedness. God is against injustice. And God is a God of justice. So He will do what is right. And there is a time that is coming, guys, when Jesus Christ will come back. And He is going to judge the world where you stand when He comes back. So make sure you are right with God. Make sure you are living according to His words, yourself and your family. Now we're going to see that God does do right by Abraham and saves his nephew Lot. That's going to come in the next chapter, so chapter 19. So that'll be our next video, and we'll see the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah as well. So, Christian friends, I hope you found this video interesting. If you have questions or concerns or things that you learned maybe today that you didn't hear before, or maybe even things that you think that I missed, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And Christian friends, please continue to be the salt to the earth, be the light to the world. Go encourage somebody else today, because the world desperately, desperately needs it. And I'll see you in the next video. All glory to God.